Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater Podcast, the podcast where we talk about.
Everything theater. Hi there, I'm Benita Zahn.
And I'm Ellen Cribbs. And
And
actually, this is the one episode where we're not talking about everything theater in a sense.
that's right, but a lot of the folks that we'll be talking about have trod the boards
Yes.
because the back and forth now, as we've said many times, is really quite robust. Not the way it was at one point when you did either or, it was Hatfields and McCoys. We're going to be talking about the Oscar picks, and we've got a great guest with us. We'll get to him in a second. But Ellen, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk just a moment about how, in a sense, how explosive theater is beginning to open here in the capital region.
I was going to say, just last week in our backstage episode, we were saying we felt that we were on a verge of announcements. And then all week it's been this theater company, that theater company. Today was Proctor saying, hey, we're going to be back in December. It's very exciting.
Yeah. So, and if you haven't already purchased a ticket for the Park Stage Company, they are already moved on to a third week. They're doing I Love You, You're Perfect Now Change. That's coming up at the end of April. So jump in because, the fact is it's still limited. And that's part of the issue with Proctors. Some of the tours don't want to make the commitment because they can't sell enough tickets the way the regs are right now.
Right. Yeah. It's a tricky dilemma.
Yeah, but the theaters, the movie theaters have opened, and in some cases it's enough, some cases it's not, but a lot of what's nominated is already streaming. So a little bit of fanfare, hear the horns blaring in the background, the drums, and it's our pleasure to welcome Jay Bobbin, longtime local critic in the capital region. Good to have you with us.
Ladies, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. I appreciate it.
Exciting season, definitely a different one, Jay.
Boy, different is right, Benita and Ellen. Different is absolutely right. It's going to be such an interesting Oscar cast because, you make the point, a lot of these have been streaming, and that's been the major outlet for these. I think about a couple of years ago when Netflix had Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, and there was all this outrage about it. It's like, how can they show this on streaming? It should be in theaters. The fact is, if you didn't have streaming right now, a lot of these people might not have reached most of the people they have reached. You look at movies like Mank, which is the top nominated film this year with 10 nominations. That's a Netflix project. At least they picked it up. So if that had not gotten out there via that avenue, I don't know the theaters alone, those that were available for it. And even then, it's kind of an art house movie. So that almost cuts down the number of theaters that might have shown it. I don't know that it would have gotten out to as many people as it has, which still isn't a great number, but relatively speaking. But Netflix, I mean, obviously it has its audience. And even if you have Netflix, there's no guarantee you're going to watch all these nominated films on Netflix. They're available to you, but it doesn't automatically mean you're going to see them all.
Yeah, I want to talk a little politics before we get into the actual categories.
Sure.
Was it about at this point? I think it's now 3 years ago, where the hashtag was Oscars So White,
Right.
and it was a real turning point. You look at the movies that are nominated this year, and it is much more diverse. And I think, don't we have 2 women nominated in the director category as
I
well?
believe so. Yeah, at least 2 women. Yeah, I believe so. I don't have them right in front of me. I have to admit all of them, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, was it Nomadland? Definitely.
Nomadland's did great at the BAFTAs recently. So
And Miami.
One Night in Miami, that's Regina King, I believe.
Right.
So yeah, very, very prominent female directors this year. And yeah, to have 2 out of the 5 as female directors, that makes a big year right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You're right about that.
you have to, I don't want to wonder, but I don't know. You've got to hope that this really has become a sea change and it's paved the way for what tomorrow will look like.
Well, you look at what happened with the Golden Globes, and there was such a backlash against the fact that they did not recognize certain parts of society, as it were, for their contributions to the movie industry this year. Huge backlash there, to the extent that they're revising their membership, or at least they say they are, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. So you look at that, you look at the world we're in now, you look at the subjects of these films, and you wonder how on earth could you ignore, in the times we're living in, some of these movies? If you don't factor them in, of course you look like you're either neglectful or naive, or whatever the word may be, because we are living in
Or
this world.
malevolent, actually.
Yeah, malevolent, that works. Uh, so it's kind of interesting to see what happens when you, and if you look at these Oscars, I mean, they're pretty inclusive, these nominations by and large. Maybe not everything got nominated to the extent some people might have expected, but still, you look at the wealth that's spread around here between things like Nomadland and Mank and One Night in Miami and Judas and the Black Messiah. I mean, you got a lot of representation there. So
Ma
I think
Rainey.
yeah, absolutely. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, certainly. So you look at the diversity that's represented by the films and by their artists who are involved. And happily, that hashtag I don't think has much of a place this year as far as the Oscars at least are concerned, which has to be encouraging to the film community in general and to members of the Academy who can kind of breathe a sigh of relief. They're not going to be painted with that brush, as it were, this year.
Yeah. Ellen, what do you think? You want to start with leading actor in a leading role?
Oh,
What's your pleasure?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, yeah, this and leading actor, this is a sad one to talk about, obviously, because the great Chadwick Boseman
Yeah.
is no longer with us. And, from what I've heard, it's sounding like he deserves it. And I actually just yesterday watched Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Hmm.
And it's funny, on our last conversation, Benita and I had in our backstage episode, we talked about monologues and how a lot of actors are not big fans of doing monologues. But talk about, if you want to see great performance of a monologue, watch Chadwick. It's amazing.
I'll tell you what's sad about that too, as far as I can, not to interrupt, but I mean, it seems like this might have set a whole new threshold for the kinds of roles he would get going forward. I mean, sure, Black Panther, no question about it. I mean, superstardom right there. But you look at something like this, plus One Night in Miami. I mean, he's had great representation in this past movie year. When I say great representation, I don't mean to minimize what he did, but to have him up for such two distinctive performances, and sadly the circumstances that they are, it does make you kind of sad to think what might have been to come. And you got to expect there was a lot to come there.
I can't imagine anybody else. I mean, look, you agree, you've got Riz Ahmed, Anthony Hopkins in The
Yes.
Father, Gary Oldman in Mank, and
Thank
Steve Reich
you.
Yunin.
Right.
But
Minari, right.
I can't imagine anybody but Chadwick Boseman winning this. Can you?
You know, it's a sen and I don't mean to minimize again the performance, but you've got the sentimental factor going there too. And again, I say this advisedly because I don't want anybody to think I'm being heartless about it. But it is true that in certain circumstances, the Academy favors certain people under certain circumstances, which again is not to diminish the performance. But you've got that factor going in. And frankly, you talk about the politics of Hollywood. Yeah, that's a factor of it. Sometimes it's the emotion that rides.
Yeah.
Although Anthony Hopkins did win the BAFTA for The Father, but then again, you got to expect those are British awards, and of course, Anthony Hopkins being a native of that country, or Wales, I'm not sure, but over there somewhere,
Yeah,
you get he
Have you
had to be a
seen?
favorite.
Wait,
he's
Jay, have you
really
seen
great
them
in it
all?
too.
Not all of them, I have to admit, but a good number of them. Mank, I loved. Mank, I'm so thrilled that it got as many nominations. In fact, I talked to Ben Mankiewicz recently from Turner Classic Movies, and of course, Mank is about his grandfather, Herman J. Mankiewicz, who co-wrote Citizen Kane with Orson Welles. And boy, the source that went on that set, I mean, that really did make a movie of its own. And I thought David Fincher, the director, told it extremely well. And just a great cast, great performance by Gary Oldman. In fact, Ben Mankiewicz said to me he doubts he'll think of his grandfather again without seeing Gary Oldman's face in his mind. I mean, of course, he knew the real man, but not well, he admitted. He kept Herman J. Mankiewicz was well along in years by the time. And Ben said he regrets that he was of an age at the time where he really didn't have the movie grasp to ask his grandfather all these questions that he certainly would have now, being in the face of Turner Classic Movies.
But he was his grandfather,
Yeah,
who thinks?
exactly. That's it. It's grandpa. To him, it's grandpa. Exactly. To
You're
us, it's
asking for money and,
right.
can't he?
To us, it's the guy who created Rosebud, or at least co-created Rosebud. But it was a great chat I had with him. But what Ben Mankiewicz said that I thought was interesting. He regrets that his father, Frank Mankiewicz, the famous political consultant, isn't here anymore, because he said his father would have gotten such a kick out of seeing a movie about his father that he's really sorry that wasn't able to happen because of what the timing was and circumstances. But Mank is a terrific movie, and I hope that has a very long life like other Hollywood stories.
So I'm going down. I'm going to keep our feet to the fire. Is your pick Chadwick Boseman for Best Actor?
Yeah, I would say so, but Anthony Hopkins having won the BAFTA, again, I have to factor in it was England, but still, I mean, Anthony Hopkins, great actor, great performance. I would think, though, with all the circumstances involved, again, not to sound at all heartless, Chadwick Boseman probably will carry it, I would think.
Yeah. I haven't seen. Have you, Ellen? Did you see The Father yet?
Yes, and it was before I saw Ma Rainey, and I was like, oh, Anthony Hopkins has to win. It's an
Yeah.
amazing
He'll be a
performance.
close runner-up, that's for sure, if he
Okay.
doesn't
Yeah.
actually win it, but yeah.
I haven't
Good.
seen that one, but when I think of Chadwick Boseman's his performance, every time I get goosebumps. He
Sure.
was just
Yeah, he
he
definitely
didn't
deserves it.
he embodied it. He became it. He was great.
Sure.
Now, actor in a supporting role is an interesting category this year.
Mhm.
You've got Sacha Baron Cohen in The Trial of the Chicago Seven,
Yeah. How about that?
um, right, which was a great movie.
Which
Yes.
can I a
Those are
little
Aaron
sidebar?
Sorkin.
Right.
Little sidebar, real quick. Something I noticed this year, and I know this is not a big surprise because it's been a trend, but this year in particular, watching the movies, it's like there are so many British actors,
Yeah.
and especially British actors playing very American stories. I mean,
Yeah.
Trial of Chicago 7 alone has Sacha Baron Cohen, Eddie Redmayne, Mark Rylance.
Mhm.
What do you think that
You can
trend
almost translate
is?
to what happens in TV though in America lately, because you've got so many actors coming in from Canada and other countries playing lead roles in American series. Because in what I do in my day job, as it were, I hear about so many people that American actors are sometimes their noses are bent a little out of shape because you've got all these newcomers coming in and playing American roles. And of course, you hear about certain people. You would expect certain kinds of people to be cast in certain roles that might be tailored to them, and it doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes there are big controversies about that. But in the sense, Ellen, that yes, there are a lot of British actors playing American roles in movies and TV. We know all about that.
Mhm.
Especially these days. I mean, more and more. And you're so shocked to hear these people talk in their normal voices and that they have foreign accents because you know them as the American characters. So it may be something that stands out in movies this year, but in the media in general, to be honest, it's not all that new.
Yeah. It's just an interesting insight. I was like, wow, it's more and more every year. it's,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like all the Brits, British invasion.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
There'll
But
be
there are
a
great actors this year. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I think that a lot of people don't realize what a good actor Sacha Baron Cohen is. You know, you only think of his
Borat and all.
Borat, you
I
know,
Right.
know from
but
Ali G. Yeah.
But even then, Borat, he got in the Golden Globes because they split things
right,
up still by drama and comedy. They recognized him at least in the nominations for Borat. In fact, they really loved him in that role, and of course, he's had controversy with that. But
right.
still, you rein him in a certain way with a filmmaker like Aaron Sorkin in Chicago 7,
Yeah.
and you see what he can do. Plus, he's married to Isla Fisher, so she might have given him some tips too on
Right.
the side.
I'm
But
trying to
yeah,
think. He was in a movie. Oh, I'll tell you all about it now. I can't think of the title. He plays an Israeli. It's a true story. Um, who pretends to be an Egyptian. I think, and he infiltrates. Is it? I think I'm going to quick
okay.
Google it. And he becomes very highly placed
Mm,
in an Arab dominated country.
mm.
And you know at the end, you know what's going to happen because they started. It's I think a 4 or 5 part. It was on Netflix, and it is a searing performance.
Hmm.
He's before we're done, you know, I'm going to look it
Sure,
up
sure.
because I'm visualizing here. So in best supporting, you've got Sacha Baron Cohen, Daniel
Oh
Kaluuya
yeah, yeah, from Get
from
Out.
Judas
Right,
and the Black
right,
Messiah.
right,
Another
right.
Then
British
you've also
actor.
got Leslie Odom,
Yeah.
One Night
He's
in Miami. He's already sold out. He's going to be at
Pro- is it Proctor's or
no, he's not going to be at
okay.
Proctor's. He's going to be
The
in the Berkshires.
Oh, okay, okay.
At uh, not at
Bar-
at
Barrington?
not Barrington. Yes, at
Berkshire Theater
Barrington, not
Okay.
Berkshire Theater Festival, at Barrington.
Okay.
Oh,
He's already sold
He's
out.
also up for Best Song too. He's got a couple of Oscar nominations.
If you were lucky enough, hello Dolly, she jokes and
Right.
says if you got to see him in Hamilton.
Right.
Then you've got Paul. Is it Ratchie? How do you pronounce his last
Yeah,
name?
I don't know how to pronounce. I know the spelling, but I'm tough on the spell. I'm tough
Yeah,
on the
from
pronunciation. But
Sound of Metal. Ellen, do
right.
you know?
I'm actually not sure how it's pronounced.
Yeah,
And
somebody's
that's
gonna
you got some
look it up,
unknowns this year too. There's a
right?
point there. You got people who are really unknown to the American
Right.
audience. By
And
the way.
then Lakeith Stanfield,
Yes, he's a
also from
terrific boy. He's a terrific actor. I've seen him in a number of things, and he and Daniel Kaluuya together. They're actually both up for Judas and the Black
yeah.
Messiah.
So who's your
So
pick in this, Jay?
Ay, ay, ay.
Come on, you knew we were going to.
I like Daniel Kaluuya. I think, that movie, Judas and the Black Messiah, didn't have a big distribution. I think that's one of the ones that HBO Max had through Warner Brothers. I think they did one of the simultaneous releases. But Judas and the Black Messiah, I'll tell you, if you still got access to it, that is quite a movie. Really, really well done. And those two together, it's tough because they go in such synchronicity in that movie. Keith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya, those are two great performers and two great performances. But I would give the edge to Daniel Kaluuya, and plus he's just generally great. I think he's done terrific work in recent years, so I'd love to see that.
Okay, so that's your pick. I'm looking for the Sacha Baron Cohen
Okay.
um, movie. It's still going. Ellen, you take the next one. Go ahead.
Actress in a lead role.
Sure.
So we got Viola Davis, Andra Day for the United States versus Billie Holiday, Vanessa Kirby, Pieces of a Woman, Frances McDormand, Nomadland, and Carey Mulligan, Promising Young Woman.
That's a tough category. I'll tell you, you've got some standout performances there. Frances McDormand already is doing very well with Nomadland. I mean, she's an Oscar veteran. I mean, you barely see an Oscar cast now where Frances McDormand is not sitting in one of the nominees seats. But Carey Mulligan, she blows Promising Young Woman out of the water. She was terrific on Saturday Night Live recently too. But I've always liked Carey Mulligan, and I'm glad to see her get a showcase role like this. And also Andra Day. The life she breathes into Billie Holiday. I mean, we think of Diana Ross and Lady Sings the Blues, but Andra Day really reinvents Billie Holiday in a filmic way. And you've got three really huge performances there, and that's a tough choice. But,
and Viola Davis.
You can never discount Viola Davis.
Who as Ma Rainey, the ending shot. The look she gives is just, she both knows she knows she lost in the winning. I mean, it's a searing moment that she shares with the audience.
And you need a skillful actress like that to pull that moment off. That's true. It seems like if you look at the conventional wisdom, to use that old cliche, it looks like Frances McDormand is on another streak right now for Nomadland. So I think on that basis, I'd give the edge to her. But you look at those other performances, that's the tough category this year. I wouldn't be surprised that anything could happen there, but it seems like Frances McDormand's on her track to, I guess it would be her third best actor roster at this. Yeah, it would be your third after Fargo and Three Billboards Outside Ebbing.
Right.
That's why I'm kind of rooting for Carey Mulligan, because I was like, oh, let's give it to someone.
That's a great performance and a very original movie too. But again, you need the right actress to pull that off, and you might not think she's it, but she more than proves she is.
I suspect whoever wins, no one will go, oh man, they blew that.
Yeah. I mean, you look at that split, it can go any way really, and that's true. I mean, that is one solid category right there, which are the fun ones. They're the fun ones, and I don't mind being surprised with those like that, because you know that any pick is going to be high quality there, and you're not going to have that factor that you just mentioned, Benita. Why do they do that?
Because there were years where you sit home and you go, how come?
Yeah.
Right?
Pia Zadora for Butterfly at the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
I'll simply throw that out there. Sorry, Pia.
But
I know her.
The contention was that it got bought.
Right. Well, that organization's had some sketchy history there, so which really came out this year, frankly. But yeah, that's true.
On to
supporting act. No, we did supporting actor. Supporting actress.
We got supporting actress.
Yeah, so let's see. So we got Maria Bakalova. Is that saying
right? I think that right. Close
from
enough.
Borat. Glenn Close. Gotta love.
Hillbilly Elegy, right?
Elegy. And
she was great.
That's a unique role for Glenn Close. You know, it's almost like a Meryl Streep thing. You know, you think she can play anything, but you look at Glenn Close in Hillbilly Elegy, and especially at this stage in her career, even Amy Adams, for that matter, Amy Adams in that movie, I thought was really quite good too.
Yeah. Last year or 2 years ago that Glenn Close didn't win. That it was kind of a bit of an upset.
I think it was a couple years. Yeah, I know the movie too. The the woman behind, she was the woman behind the man, and the husband who was. I know exactly the movie you're talking about. But yeah, she was the conventional wisdom that year. I was surprised she didn't win.
She's overdue for one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who else do we have on there?
Olivia Coleman.
Yeah, who's terrific.
Right.
Amanda Seyfried.
She's terrific in Mank. She does a great job in Mank. I think she's elevated her career to another stage automatically through that performance.
I was
She's
gonna
a bit of
say,
a
yeah, I
dark
didn't recognize.
horse, isn't? I'm sorry, Ellen. Go ahead.
Oh, just
She
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
She is, but a lot of critics are pulling for her because they, it's one of those things where you think she's just does Mean Girls or something like a tawdry thriller like Gone. Then she comes through with something like Mank, and you really see the artistry that somebody possesses. They just haven't gotten the chance to show it. So I think a lot of people are rooting for her. Plus, it's a
I
great
I
movie,
saw
great
that
performance.
she's actually putting her out there to play Glinda in Wicked if it whenever it
Okay.
gets turned
Yeah.
into a movie. And I wonder
Well,
if
this
this
is it. I
Oscar
think that
nomination helps.
whatever happens here, I think she's hit a turning point in her career, and that's always fun to see.
Hmm.
The movie is The Spy. It just seemed too
Oh,
simple.
okay.
He plays
Okay.
Eli Cohen. It was 6
Okay.
episodes. If you haven't seen it,
All righty.
Sacha Baron Cohen, treat yourself. It's hard to sit through in some regards
Mm,
because you know what's going to happen, but
right.
the performance is just fabulous.
Good to know.
So you're picking who, Jay?
Oh, we have one
Hey,
left too. Jay, help me out with the pronunciation. I'm gonna butcher her name. Yu Jung Yoon.
close enough. That's from Minari, right? The
Yes.
grandmother of Minari, who's terrific, by the way. But that's such a specific performance. But sometimes those are the ones who win, the ones that you don't really know for anything else but that one role. Yeah, I'm going to pull on a sentimental lever for some Amanda Seyfried because A, I love the movie, B, I love the performance, and C, I would really love to see her escalate with an Oscar to this next phase that I'm sure her career is going into. I always love to see that. And she's done a lot of good, solid, reliable work over the years, but kind of in genre movies that it's expected what might be done by an actress in those. She's always done it very reliably. But again, you look at something like Mank, that's a breakthrough for her. And I would love to see that rewarded with the gold. That would be really nice.
So then, if we look at directing, and granted, they don't always go hand in hand,
Right.
but you've got
Fincher,
another
I mean.
round. Thomas Vinterberg for another round.
Right.
David Fincher for Mank.
Mhm.
Um, Lee Isaac Chung for Minari.
Mhm.
Chloe Zhao for
Nomadland,
Nomadland,
right.
and Emerald
Fennell for
Fennel is
Promising
a
Young. Yeah,
promising young woman.
that's another tough category right there. Those are all, you figure the movies have to be put together by the person calling the shots. And you look at all those directors, and certainly David Fincher's proven his skill time and again. But it's exciting to see people like a first timer like Emerald Fennell or the director of Minari. I mean, first time out of the gate. It's a tough one. That is a tough one, I gotta say. Um, I think Emerald Fennell, I think she'll get more chances, so I think you're probably going to discount her on that count. Plus, she also wrote the script for Promising Young Woman. So she stands a good chance of getting an Oscar for that. So they might feel a little better about not giving her the best directing thing. Um, I'd like to say David Fincher because I just think Mank is such an accomplished piece of work. Obviously, you can see that my favor is going toward that movie, but again, I love Hollywood history, so it kind of plays right into that. I think Mank's a really accomplished movie, and he's done so many different kinds of movies that I think, in a way, it commemorates not only this specific film, which it should, but also all the fine work he's done up to now. The Social Network, Seven. I mean, you can go through a whole list. I wouldn't mind seeing him get the Best Director Oscar, and I know that plays into probably our next category, so I won't jump ahead. But I'd love to see him come out with Best Director. Boom, boom.
Ellen, take it away. Best Picture.
Oh, Best Picture. Yes. Okay. So we've got The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, The Trial of the Chicago Seven.
I think Nomadland stands a really good run at it just based on the trail it's created along the way, and probably other award ceremonies to come, like the Independent Spirit Award, will probably enhance that. I'm a Mank guy all the way, as you can see. I just think Mank's a terrific movie. Again, it deals with Hollywood history, but also, I mean, you've got terrific performances. We've been talking about Amanda Seyfried. Gary Oldman is just spectacular, I think, as Herman Mankiewicz, because you have to understand this guy, who maybe a lot of people don't know of. You might know Ben Mankiewicz, or you might know Citizen Kane, and maybe know the name from his writing it, but he really gives a flesh and blood performance as this guy and brings him to life. And I love the fact that it recreates Hollywood history as well as it does. A certain period of time, you got to get the authentic look of it, what RKO looked like, RKO Radio Pictures when Citizen Kane was being made, just the whole hubbub, just the way the Orson Welles relationship was so strained between himself and Herman Mankiewicz. It deals with a lot of stuff on a lot of levels, and I just think David Fincher has a masterful control over the whole movie. Best director best director has to put all the pieces together, and that's why I always like to see best director and best picture go together, because in a way it just
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. There are years when you'll get like Steven Spielberg for directing Saving Private Ryan, while Shakespeare in Love wins Best Picture. I mean, those happen. But this year, I would love to see, and they might do the thing where they reward another director while giving the movie its due, because I think David Fincher's also a producer on Mank, so he would get the award, he would get an Oscar for that along with others, and maybe reward the director of Minari, just split it up a little bit. But I always like to see them go together, because in a way, it just makes sense in my mind. The Best Picture probably should be directed by the best director, so for me, it's Mank, and I would love to see him, and I would love to see that and David Fincher go hand in hand this year.
Do you think the movies that were not nominated for director don't have a chance of winning Best Picture because they didn't get that director
Not
nomination?
necessarily. It's funny because I've been watching a lot of, frankly, I'll mention the Turner Classic Movies. They do their 31 days of Oscar, and they have all these little factoids along the way. They made the point the Grand Hotel, which I mean, admittedly goes all the way back to 1932, that I think they said that's the only movie that's won Best Picture that wasn't nominated for a single other Oscar. The only thing it was in the running for, and you think about that, it's like, well, doesn't Best Picture put all the pieces together, like performances and script and music and whatever? Not one other nomination than Best Picture for Grand Hotel, and it won. So I don't know that it necessarily works that way. You haven't seen that a lot in recent years, I admit. If a, although I remember it was very funny, Billy Crystal, the year that Barbara Streisand directed The Prince of Tides, she wasn't nominated for it. He made the comment, evidently as a movie that directed itself,
Yes.
by not acknowledging her. I always think of that line when I think of something like that, a best picture being nominated and not the director along with it. So I don't know that it's necessarily a handicap. I just think it makes more sense though if you have the director as a nominee for whatever the best picture turns out to be.
Yeah. Now, Benita, have you seen enough that you have a pick for Best Picture?
I haven't seen Nomadland.
Nomadland. It's actually coming out on video very soon. In fact, it's right around the time of the Oscars. It's going to be
Yeah,
sometime soon. I know
And
because I
it's
already
on
got my copy.
Hulu as well.
it's on Hulu.
Yeah.
Hulu,
Yeah,
there you go. Well, that's it. You can find almost anything on streaming
yeah.
services now that's out there. So the way this year is, again, that's the funny thing about this year. If you haven't seen it in the theater, and gee, what are the odds of that this year? You can find it almost anywhere by looking at all these varieties of streaming services you have access to. Uh, it used to be kind of a marvel when so many movies got released on home video before the Oscars because you had a chance to watch them at home. Now it's almost crazy if you don't have a chance to watch them at home before the Oscars, the way things have evolved this year.
So, Jay, looking down, and you've been at this quite some time, you talk to so many people in the industry. Has movie watching, because you make a movie a certain way, but has movie watching irrevocably changed because of the pandemic? Or 18 months from now, are we all packing into the theater and letting them pop the popcorn?
Well, I have read so much about this, Benita and Ellen. I mean, I have been reading articles like crazy just out of general interest, but also because they make all these points about exactly what you're talking about. Has movie going changed forever by virtue of what the protocols will be? I mean, here's what I think of, and the litmus test for me, and you're going to know this, Benita, is the James Bond movie, No Time to Die. What else for me, right? But I mean, this movie has now been in dry dock for about 2 years. They're talking about October potentially to get it out there. But to take that movie as an example, you look at all the things around it. Will there be enough showings of it per day with as many people as you can get in the theater by what the limits are to make the kind of money they still want to make from the movie, which is why they're holding on to it, not selling it to streaming. And there have been some very big bids for it. They want to hold on to it, figuring that worldwide it'll be a smash hit. But again, you're working with theaters with reduced audiences. So you've got to have maybe 4 showings to make up the amount of profit that you would get from one showing. There's so much involved in this. So, using that as the litmus test, I think what it's going to take, and in this area, I know that Spectrum 8 and also the Bowtie theaters are already open. I think Regal opens up on April 23rd again and kind of rolls out through the area to the different theaters. We're going to see if all these protocols that are in place with the popping of the popcorn, wearing masks, restricted seating, or at least cordoned off seating, let's say, we'll see if it all works. And we don't really know until we get there. We don't know, and we don't know how long it's going to take health-wise and vaccine-wise, and not to build up. And now they're talking about possibly a third Pfizer, and I know you reported this, Benita, a third Pfizer vaccine probably possibly being needed. What will that do to people wanting to go to the theaters? What will that do to the theaters themselves having to be careful? Are you going to have to start asking me, did you have the Pfizer? Did you have the Moderna? You probably haven't had the Johnson and Johnson lately, but it's going to be very interesting to see how far this goes. And we've not been here before. I mean, this is all new stuff, brand new territory. So in certain ways, we're changed at least for the immediate future. I will say that. And when I say immediate future, I'm talking maybe 1, 2, 3 years, possibly even that. I'm no health expert, admittedly, like you certainly are, Benita.
Mhm.
But in the sense that these theaters have to respond to what's out there, what the guidances are from the government and the CDC, you're talking a whole different panorama of movie going now. You just
And I
are.
wonder, it's also, it's, what you want to do, right now I'm kind of happy. Listen, when Hamilton, and I saw Hamilton
Mhm.
with the Broadway cast, okay, not bragging, I got lucky, had a
Right,
ticket.
right,
But when it came out streaming on TV,
right.
I paid that month for Disney.
Sure.
I paid for it. And we sat and we watched it at home. And I'd seen it when it came to Proctor's. It's my point being, I knew this, but I wanted to see it. So I
Sure.
made the investment. So, Jay, they could release the 007, the Bond movie, pay per view.
Sure. Of
Mm.
course
And
they could. And that's one of the movies that would probably you almost know going in it's going to do well in that spectrum. I mean Godzilla versus Kong has done well, but again, you had HBO Max in general and be able to watch it that way. It wasn't that necessarily that specific movie you were paying for. It was part of the overall service. With Bond, yes, you'd be paying for it, but you could charge that amount. And I'm telling you, I certainly know there are enough Bond aficionados out there. Plus, we've been waiting long enough for it. So any way you can get to see it, I think people would respond to it. But that's a very specific case. That's the
yeah,
Bond case. Everything else is every other movie. Bond is a different thing. And I can't believe that MGM's not thinking about that still, even though they've turned down offers to have it on streaming. If you go the pay-per-view route and you figure what does it cost to buy a movie ticket now, in a way you're not really paying all that much more to get a showing of this at home. Plus you'll probably get it for like 48 hours. I think that's the way it works. So you can watch it a few times. I'd be surprised if we get to the October point where that movie still can't be released because of conditions. I think MGM's really going to seriously think about going the pay-per-view route because look, it's been hanging in there for 2 years. People want it. Look at me, I want it, and I'm a great example of that. It's one of the few examples where you can put it out there in another venue like that where they want to make big money off it. There are other movies like the new Mission Impossible, Top Gun, the Top Gun sequel.
yeah.
But even then, Black Widow, the Scarlett Johansson, the Marvel movie, they thought that would be one of what they call the tent poles for summer, one of the huge hits. That's now going to Disney Plus. So at a certain point, I think you look at what all the factors are, the timing, the monetary investment, what you think you can get back on that investment. I'll be interested to see how Black Widow does because that's a big litmus test in and of itself. But I think the Bond thing is a special case, and I have to believe if you put that thing out there on pay per view now, people will come, and in the numbers that they're hoping they'll come. Maybe still not theater numbers, but a very very substantial audience for that. I think.
It's interesting, Ellen and I both being, live theater fans, um, the pent up demand for that.
Mm.
Ellen, I guess my sense is I think there's a greater pent up demand to go to live theater than there is to go to a movie theater.
Yes, but I also am dreaming of the day I can go back to the theater and get some popcorn and watch a movie. I really
Yeah.
miss it. I really miss
Live
it.
theater too. I mean, even with your Hamilton example, Benita, live theater is its own creature. You cannot approximate that sitting in a living room. I mean, you can watch it in 2D, as it were, but the shared experience of being in a theater watching Hamilton, as good as the film version of it is, you're there, you're experiencing it live, you're sitting right in front of the performers. I think that's a certain kind of thrill. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but just in comparing it to movies, I would agree with with Ellen. As much as I've got the anticipation of going back to the movies.
Mhm.
Live theater is very much its own creature, I think. So I understand where you might have more of a feel for wanting to do that, and where maybe it's more of a challenge. But even then, you look at Proctor's planning its reopening, you look at Berkshire's, you look at Park Playhouse. It's coming, and they're certainly planning for it, and you hope it's all going to go okay. But and Broadway, for that matter, I mean, look at Broadway, how long that's been out. Plus, you look at that. I mean, you look at the number of people. And I've interviewed a good number of Broadway actors. They'll do Hallmark movies. People like Laura Osnes, who I've talked to. I mean, they're aching to get back to theater, and not just for themselves, but the community. It is the stage hands, the set builders, et cetera, et cetera. That is such a community, and they want to get back and get people back to work. So I think there's that aspect too. It's the same on a movie set, but it's a little bit different because you're not staging it night after night after night for however long the run is, and 8 shows a week. So I agree with you. I think there is that feel community wise. They just want to get back to what they know and love.
Jay, this has been delightful.
Pleasure to be with you, my dear, as you know. And Ellen, very nice to be with you as well.
There's the
Yes.
transparency is that there was a time in our history where Jay and I worked together. Jay
Mhm.
was coming into News Channel 13 on every Friday, and I had the good fortune to get
Well,
the lowdown on his perspective on movies, and was always kept in the know because of it. So to
well,
reunite like this,
yeah, my honor as well. Believe me, my honor as well.
Well, for our listeners, let us know on our Facebook page what you think of the Oscar predictions that you've picked, and they will be on Sunday, April 25th, which is it's the 40 years since the Oscars have been rescheduled. It was
Oh,
last in
interesting.
81 when there was an assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan.
They're going to have
Got
it at
pushed
Union Station too.
24
They're
hours.
using Union Station as the setting for it. I don't know if you've ever been there. That is one cavernous place.
yes.
So I understand why the Dolby Theater seems big, and they're still going to use that for performance sequences. But Union Station itself, in terms of social distancing, that'll take care of it.
It'll also be interesting to see the viewership
Yes, it will.
because the Grammys, they've fallen off the cliff.
Yeah. Well, they always say the viewership for an Oscar cast is in direct relation to the popularity of the movies that are up for the awards that year. I think Titanic was the highest rated Oscar cast they ever had, but that movie was such a gargantuan and so many people loved it. They wanted to see, and it was up for so many Oscars. They
And
wanted to see how well it would do.
Jay, gotta say thank you, thank you. I'm looking at the clock and we
Gotcha.
gotta run.
Gotcha.
Hi, Benita Zahn.
I'm Ellen Cribbs. We'll see you next time.